Do you guys want to know the hardest part of what I do for a living? It's probably not what you expect, and okay, maybe I'm overhyping that a little bit, but it really is kind of a weird thing to explain to people what it is that I do for my career. Now, you're probably used to hearing other content creators, other YouTubers say this, and it's not necessarily the YouTube aspect of it that makes it difficult. I think that there are enough people now that kind of get this, so unless I'm talking to somebody who's 60 or older, you guys understand how I monetize and how I make money. But what is really difficult for me to be able to communicate to people succinctly is how I help men dress better. And the reason for that is because we see style as a skill set and as an end unto itself. I've done a video on that, so you can go check this out here and see what I mean when I talk about style being an end unto itself. But most people have that as kind of their default. And so when I'm talking to guys, maybe potential clients or people that I come into contact with through work or through church or through other things, and I tell them what it is that I do, they immediately go to the default of, oh, okay, so you help guys be fashionable, or oh, you help guys get into suits, or you help guys look good, and they think that that's the extent of it. Which is not to say that those aren't part of what I do, or those are not appropriate tactics that I can employ with particular clients, but it's a little bit more than that. And as I've thought about this over the last few months, I've come to realize that style really is, even though it's not an end unto itself, style is a skill set. And as a result, we judge it as a skill set, and we can judge somebody's mastery based on what we assume to be indicators of that mastery. Now, I know that sounds a little abstract, so let me tell you what I mean. For example, as you start getting into the style game, you think of mastery as things like being able to wear 3 different patterns together in one outfit. And if you can do that and have it look good, you are masterful at your style. Or it's the ability to combine colors in a way that may be unconventional, or it may just be a little bit more ostentatious than what the average man is wearing, and so you can do it in a way that is still visually appealing, therefore you are demonstrating mastery with your style. Or it may even just be that you know how something should fit, and we make the assumption that that's going to be suits or more formal wear, because even now we still have the assumption that good style is more formal and bad style is more casual. We still operate in that kind of false paradigm, that false binary of formal good, casual bad. And the reason why men are so bad at style today is because we're casual with our style, which is not the case. But being good at dressing well is not just about being masterful when it comes to the art of dressing well. And the best way to explain this is to talk about the 3 archetypes. Now, if you're new to the channel, you don't know what I mean by the 3 archetypes. They are rugged, refined, and rakish. And I've covered a lot of this, so I will link to stuff down in the description below so you can go check out what I mean by those terms. But let's talk about those 3 archetypes and how mastery can be communicated through them, even if it's not necessarily related to style. In fact, one of the things that separates the rakish archetype from both the refined and the rugged archetypes is the fact that, to a large extent, with the way that masculinity and our relationship with clothing is perceived today, you have to have some element of rakishness in you in order to embrace menswear as a hobby, and in order to embrace sartorialism as part of your identity. The fact that generally for men in the West, it's still a little bit to say that you're into style or that you're into clothing means that you have to be willing to embrace a little bit of social risk. You have to be willing to subtly give your middle finger to the rest of the world and say, no, you know what? I don't care if you think this is unmasculine. I don't care if you think that this is stupid or shallow or frivolous or effeminate. I'm into this stuff. I like it. I benefit from it. So just getting into menswear is a little bit rakish. But that said, you can look at men who dress very well within the refined or the rugged archetypes, and they're not necessarily demonstrating sartorial mastery in the way that we, in our limited mindset, will think that they're embracing that. You don't see somebody who's dressed very well in the rugged archetype and look at him and think that he's demonstrating mastery because of the combination of his patterns or how well executed his fit is or any of those variables. But if he's dressed intentionally, if he's telling his story through his clothing, if you were able to make certain assessments and those assessments are accurate, based on what you see him wearing, then he's dressing well. He's dressing intentionally, and he's effectively and masterfully using his clothing as a means and a method of communication, even if he's wearing something incredibly simple, which is very much kind of the ethos of the rugged archetype. Most of the clients that I've worked with who fall within the rugged archetype, most of the time when you see men who embody the rugged archetype, they don't need massive wardrobes. They don't need tons of variety. They don't need bright colors or bold patterns. What they want is simplicity, because simplicity is functional and it helps them accomplish other things rather than hinders their ability to do so. Now, the same can absolutely be said for the refined archetype. Yes, there are certain ways that rakishness can bleed into both the rugged and the refined archetype, but the refined archetype in and of itself is about signaling one thing, and that is social power, social capital. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by following these strict rules that keep styles and keep aesthetics very simple. The best example of that is the tuxedo and what you typically see at a black tie affair. The classiest men, the most kind of top of the top men who fit within the refined archetype do not show up to events, whether that's the Academy Awards or it's Bond showing up to a casino. They don't go to events like this wearing brown tuxedos or crazy green dinner jackets or over-the-top bolo ties or anything else. The simplicity and elegance that's communicated through the fact that they just follow the rules, that they keep their black tie, they keep their whole ensemble incredibly simple, incredibly traditional, incredibly tried and true, is a way for them to demonstrate social mastery, for them to demonstrate social clout and capability. And so again, you can look at something like that and say, well, obviously anybody can wear a tuxedo, and as long as their tailor's good and they can make it fit, then that person isn't necessarily good at style. But that falls back to the negative default of somehow demonstrating mastery through your style means that you have to be good at style as a pursuit unto itself, which brings us back to the rakish archetype. Now, one of the things that's so interesting about the rake is that it requires mastery in very different ways, especially because as soon as you embrace an aesthetic that embraces more social risk, because you are putting yourself out there more, which means people are either going to embrace or reject you much more strongly than they do with somebody who fits within the rugged or the refined archetypes. And in order to do that well as a rake, then you have to have mastery both in other aspects of your life and in your ability to dress well. The simplicity and the strength of simplicity that works within the refined and the rugged archetypes is completely thrown out the window with the rake. So what I want you to think about with this is, are you actually somebody who embraces the rakish archetype, who your interaction with the world beyond your clothing is rakish? You consider yourself to be a rebel, an outcast, an outlaw, somebody who does better on the fringes of society, somebody who does better on his own than who functions better within tribes or groups or organizations? Or do you just assume that you're rakish because the only way to really embrace menswear as a hobby involves elements of rakishness? Now, again, and we've talked about this before, but just get this right first. You are not all one and none of the other. Very, very few men are almost entirely one thing with none of the other when it comes to the archetypes. I'm a lot of refined, a very good chunk of rakish, and I'm increasingly becoming more and more rugged. But my primary archetype is not the rake. I have to embrace a little bit of it like we talked about earlier so that I can embrace menswear as a hobby. That's part of who I am and how I interact with the world. But I am not primarily defined as a rebel. 15-year-old me wishes that I were, but I'm not. So I want you to think about that within your own context. Do you think that you're a rake because you enjoy menswear? Or is rakishness only a part of who you are? And one of the ways in which that's manifested is in the fact that you're into style. And is there a way for you to, maybe you don't have hardly any rake in you at all, is there a way for you to still be able to demonstrate mastery through your clothing, even if what you're not demonstrating is mastery in the art of dressing well or dressing in a way that's complicated or masterful? Does your head hurt like mine? I mean, I know what I'm saying and I still feel confused about all this because it's hard to explain. So I want to know what you think. Does this concept make sense to you? Does the idea of mastery within the bubble of dressing well, as opposed to the overarching idea of using your clothing to demonstrate mastery in other venues and other channels, does that make sense? And have you fallen into this pit of, I like to dress well, therefore my mastery is in dressing well, and subconsciously that means I have to be a rake because of all the social implications that come with that? So leave me a comment below, let me know what you think. Now, if you're not sure where you fall within those archetypes, I've got a quiz. You can take that right here. It's 8 questions long, and based on those answers, it's going to give you your results and tell you which one of those 3 archetypes is your primary archetype. If you're interested in learning about more topics like this and better understanding how these subconscious and subtle things are communicated through your clothing, go watch this video. And if you enjoy this video, you enjoy this discussion, leave it a like, make sure you subscribe and comment below, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.